Hey folks, it's Ray at DCRainmaker.com here, and today I've got 13 brand new things on the brand new Garmin Edge 1030 Plus. Now this was not the only bike computer they announced today. They also announced the new 130 Plus, which is kind of like the Edge 1030 Plus, and that takes the existing model and adds a few new features. Now we're going to dive right into it with a freebie feature not on the official 13 items, which is the colors change. As you may have noticed, it is now black as opposed to the previous white that there was there. Now they also had an Edge 1030 version for Bontrager that was black, but this one is now the legit base Garmin Edge 1030 Plus is simply black. The price remains the same at $599. Yes, $599. But otherwise, from the top, it looks pretty darn similar to the existing Edge 1030. However, as you'll find out, it's quite a bit different underneath. Now, number one on the list is free global maps. In the past, when you bought an Edge 1030, you got the region that you bought it in. If you bought it in the US, you got North America. If you bought it in Europe, you bought Europe maps, or you got Europe maps. But now you get all maps everywhere in the world for free, which is kind of a huge deal. It used to be that only Wahoo offered that, and then Sigma offered that, and then Hammerhead offered that, and then everyone started offering it except for Garmin. For Garmin, you had to either download free third-party maps, which were fine, but they didn't include all the heat map data, all the good stuff that you actually wanted, or you had to pay. Now, though, the way it works is that you get 2 map regions preloaded. So if you buy it in the US, you get the US and Europe. If you buy it in Europe, you get Europe and the US plus Africa. If you buy it in Australia, you get Australia, New Zealand, plus Europe and Africa. Anyways, the pairings are on the screen right now, but then you can go into Garmin Express, which is the desktop app, and simply load additional regions onto there for free with the full high fidelity, high quality maps that you would normally have on the Edge 1030. Now, if you've been a long time Garmin follower, you know that's a pretty significant departure from the past for them. Now, how they're able to do it though from a tech standpoint, we'll have to get to a little bit later on. Number 2 on the list is the new daily suggested workouts. The way it works is that anytime you turn on the device, you will be given a daily suggested workout. And what that does, it looks at your existing training load, and that can be loaded from a watch like the Garmin Fenix series. That's going to go up to Garmin Connect and sync back down again via Physio TrueUp. And so when you power on the device, it takes a couple extra seconds. It's going to pull that data via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth Smart or even a USB cable if you had it plugged in, and then it'll show you the suggested workout for the day based on your training load. And for the most part, this seems to actually work fairly well. Now, it's not like a super detailed workout every single day, so it's not like you'd see from Trainer Road or Sufferfest or other things like that, but it gets the core components of the zones right. So if you need base work, it gives you base work. If you need a VO2 max workout, it's giving you a VO2 max time there. And this is notable because this is the very first time Garmin's ever actually done suggested workouts based on your training load. It's something that Polar started doing about a year ago, but Garmin's never quite taken that step of saying, hey, here's your load, and now here's what you should do from an actual training standpoint. And I think it'll be interesting to see where this goes over the next little while. Note that if you do have a training plan synced to the device for something like Trainer Road or Training Peaks or Final Surge or whatever the case may be, those will continue to go to the device and you can use those workouts instead of the daily suggested workout. Next up, number 3 on the list is new LiveTrack functionality with course sharing. Now, of course, Garmin LiveTrack has been around for like ever, like literally it's been around for 10 years, and it's been changed for exactly 0 of those years. It's basically been a dumpster fire. It's the feature that I generally find is the most frustrating feature on a Garmin device. But the one thing that's substantially improved is the LiveTrack experience from your friends and family's perspective. So with the Edge 1030 Plus, as long as you have a course there, your friends and family will now see the route where you're going, as well as all the usual live tracking data like your power, your speed, your cadence, your heart rate, all that fun stuff is shown there as well. Now they can see the course and where you are on that course. The good news, if you got an Edge 1030, this one, or an Edge 830, or the Edge 530, those will all get an update later on this year that will bring that same course functionality to all those devices, to all your friends. Hopefully that makes sense. Speaking of things that make sense, if you're finding this video interesting or useful or something, just go ahead and simply whack that like button at the bottom there. It really helps out this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, the next 2 items are back-to-back items, but I think are the start of something. So the first new feature is that all of your existing activity profiles, so all your settings essentially, are transferred over from this to this. They're transferred over for all sorts of devices. In fact, Garmin over the last month has been quietly updating firmware on really old devices like the Edge 520, the Edge 1000, the Edge 520 Plus, the Edge 530, the Edge 830, the Edge 820, the Edge 520 Plus. I don't know if I said that or not, but all those things got firmware updates so that now they're quietly updating their stuff behind the scenes. And when you open up this for the first time and set it up, it'll simply just be right there on there waiting for you. Which gets the next thing that's ready and waiting for you, which is sensors. Those two are migrated. So in addition to all the activity stuff, your sensors, up to 30 of them. Now the way it works is it looks at all of your activities over the last 365 days, finds all the unique sensors in there, including the names that you've given them, and then dumps them on your unit ready to go. In my case, having like literally 50 to 100 different sensors I've paired over the last year, and to be fair, it actually did load the most recent sensors onto my device, so by and large, things just worked. I just went outside and my sensors were there. It was kind of nice. Now, of course, the downside here is there still isn't any phone-based data field and configuration type setup for the Edge 1030 Plus. Also of note is that that new setup process for both the sensors and activity profiles is coming to the Edge 530, 830 sometime later on this year. Next on the list is the new rerouting options when you go off course. So if you're going down, you make a wrong turn, and you start going a distance of about 30 meters or so, it'll actually give you three options. Well, technically fourth option, we'll talk about that in just a second, but it'll give you three rerouting options. One is to get back to the point that you left the course. Two is to rejoin the course later on down the road. And then three is to cut across the course. And you can see that really visibly on this ride I did earlier this morning, where the first option was just simply go back 30 meters or so. The second option was to go down about a mile or so before I caught back up again. And the third option was to cut off almost my entire course and then just simply finish up the last quarter mile of my big loop route I did. Still, and that gives you control of what happens on that rerouting experience. Now, if there aren't any other options, like say you just turn off on a single road and there's no other way to get back, then it'll just simply do the recalculation for you, just like it used to in the past. The next new feature that's paired with that is the new pause routing option. So this is something that's great if you jump into a cafe or you just need to go somewhere slightly off course, but you know where you're going. You can pause the routing and then do your thing and then come back and resume the routing. It sounds silly, but it's actually super useful for those sort of long rides where you don't want to have this thing beeping at you and recalculating and all that crap. You just want it to simply shut up for a second. Now, the next new feature is that the Trailforks database is built into the Edge 1030 Plus. Now, you may be saying, wasn't Trailforks already on the Edge 1030 in a firmware update over the last little while? And the answer is yes, but not the entire database of routes and all the mapping information that came with it. That was something that came to the Edge 530 and the 830 last year, but not actually the 1030. So the 1030 got all this stuff, but not the underlying data that could be used from a mountain biking perspective off-road and have that data just built into the Edge 1030 Plus. Now that's there. Next on the list is making sense of something from earlier on in the video, which is the global mapping options. You may have been asking yourself, how do they do that? How do they go ahead and have all these maps on there? Well, if you flip it over, you get the answer right there, kind of. So if you look at the Edge 1030 on the back, you see there's this little coin cell thing there. That's where you put a micro SD card. On the Edge 1030 Plus, that slot is gonzo. And the reason for that is they've increased the storage from 16 gigs to 32 gigs, which is essentially enough for all the maps. I mean, like almost all the maps. You could easily put North America, Europe, and then at least another continent, probably even 2 continents on there without any problems at all. Okay, so the next new feature is changes to the battery life, and pretty significant ones at that. And so what Garmin's done is they basically created a chart which has these 3 different battery levels in it. At the base level, meaning if you use all the features, you're gonna get 24 hours of battery life, including the backlight on at full brightness, like all the things you shouldn't do that I do every ride, that's 24 hours of battery life. And then if you do a bunch of things that optimize it, you get up to 48 hours. For most people, they'll probably be in the 36-hour range. Now, whether or not you're gonna go for a 48-hour ride, I'm not. If I have, I've made a horrible life choice and I am really in a bad spot. But maybe you do. If you do, you can. For most of us, that just means we get to charge it less, which is kind of handy. Also, just like the Edge 1030 on the back, there's the contacts there that you can use the Garmin charging pack thingamajig that locks onto the mount and makes it all secure. So if you do, for some crazy reason, need to go more than 48 hours on a single ride, you can do that now. Now, what's cool, to plug one of my own little tools, is that using the DCR analyzer, which is down in the link there, you can actually chart any Garmin device's battery life. It records it in the file and I can display it. And it's really, really cool. And so I can see that these battery specs actually hold up to my testing, which is, it's kind of a nice thing to see that the specs match the reality. Next is that the display has been changed. In particular, I've done a couple things. One, on the Edge 1030, there was issues that people had with something called the blue halo, which meant you saw a very halo-ish sort of blue thing around the outside of your screen. Never happened on mine, but it has happened to some people. In the case of the Edge 1030, Garmin actually changed the way they do their screens in early 2019 to get rid of that, so that helps that. But for the Edge 1030 Plus, they actually grabbed the Edge 830 screen and just simply made it bigger. And so that's the screen that you see in the Edge 1030 Plus. It's a screen that people seem to be pretty darn happy with. I've heard almost no complaints about the Edge 830's touchscreen in the last 14 months or something like that. Steven's excited about it. So I think it's a good move. I've had no problems with it. I even had a freak thunderstorm yesterday, so I took it outside and kind of this whole test side by side of how things worked, and like there was no problems. It was dumping rain, and I was able to navigate through the user interface and all that kind of stuff without any issues. Speaking of navigating through the user interface, the Edge 1030 Plus includes what Garmin claims is a 2 times faster processor, which means that things will happen twice as fast. In particular, the routing they said should be equal to the Edge 830 in terms of like calculations and things like that. I haven't actually had that sort of experience for pre-ride route calculation, but everything else is super fast. So just kind of put them side by side here. I'll just go through some of the user interface, pressing things at the exact same time as best I can. So navigation seems about the same. Open up courses seems about the same. Some of this stuff is pretty quick. I'm going to open up Friday 42 kilometer loop on both of these. Loading course, you can see that one a lot faster. Let's try to do the map here. That one a little bit faster. In some cases, twice as fast isn't really that much of a difference, right? But overall, things seem to be a little quicker, a little bit crispier. Now, practically speaking, I'm not really sure this is making too much of a difference. You're still not at the same level of speed as something like the Hammerhead Crew, which is just so beautifully phone fast. But again, the battery life is, depending on how you judge it, like 1/4 of this thing right here. So that's something you got to weigh and balance, but it's definitely way faster, display-wise and refresh-wise than the Wahoo Roam is. But all these units will get you where you got to go. The only issue I really saw was that the pre-ride route calculation, which you don't actually have to complete, just took a long-ass time for me on the Edge 1030 Plus. Again, you can ignore that and just simply start riding. It'll sort out behind the scenes as a background process, but that is the one most visible place to see the routing improvements, and I couldn't see it there. Now, one thing that you can see, and you will hear, is the final item on the list, which is the new beeper. If you are a Garmin aficionado, a Garmin person, if you've been around the Garmin block a long time, then you're going to hear a new beep right here. So first, let me give you the audible chirp and I'm alive sound of the original Edge 1030 and every other Garmin device ever made. There you go. You just heard it right there. Boop, boop. Now, the biggest thing you're going to notice here is just how much louder this one is. So turn this on. It sounds like an old Pac-Man game or something. It doesn't quite feel the same anymore. It's not the same tone. It's like when a logo it's changed. It's just not the same anymore. But it is louder. Garmin says they're doing that because it makes it easier to hear, which I guess is a good enough reason. Now, if you want plenty more details, things like accuracy and just way more details than you could ever possibly imagine, I've got my full in-depth review that you can see on the screen right now. Link down below there. Again, other than that, don't forget my Edge 130 Plus, this little guy, video up there in the corner as well. And then stay tuned for later in the week. We'll probably drop a few more Edge 1030 Plus things that I might come up with, maybe based on some of your suggestions or questions in the comments down below. Again, if you found this video helpful or interesting or something, whack that like button or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. Have a good one.